you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. We're going to have people coming in, so I'm trying not to let my eyes go to who's in the waiting room because we have wonderful Represent Women staff who are helping out and taking care of that for us. So hello and welcome to the Women's Power Collaborative Lunch and Learn called VRLHQ and You, which is hosted by Erin Vilardi, founder and CEO of Vote Run Lead. Erin is also a leadership circle member of the Women's Power Collaborative and has been such a huge help from the inception of this amazing platform. So we're super happy to have her and all of our friends at Vote Run Lead here with us and all of you with us as well. So thank you so much for joining. We have a lot of people here. We got a lot of people coming in. So I think what would be great is if all of you can take a minute to put your name, the organization that you work for, and your location in the chat, just so that we can see who's joining us from where. Go ahead and introduce yourself, say hello. And I'll also introduce myself for those of you that I haven't met yet. So I'm Victoria Pelletier. I am the National Partnerships Manager with Represent Women. And so happy to see all of you. And if you're getting familiar with Represent Women or you need a little bit of a refresher, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to system strategies that help build women's political power. So more of us can run, win, serve, and lead. And if you are getting familiar with the Women's Power Collaborative, this is an incredible resource created here at Represent Women. And it is the only national level platform that combines women's representation efforts with the efforts focused on democracy reform. So if you're not yet a member, you should become a member because there's a lot happening. We have resources, we have research, we have networking opportunities, we have regional group meetings, which are some of my favorites. So if you are in a state or a city with a lot of movement on women's representation, or you're in a state and a city where you want there to be lots of movement on women's representation, please don't hesitate to join as a member. We'll get you plugged into our regional groups. You'll get to meet other people doing similar work in states nearby to you. And it's just a really great resource and networking and collaboration hub. So would love to welcome all of you to the platform. We'll put a link in the chat. It's free to join. There's a 5-question questionnaire, and then we will get you plugged into the platform. And one of the really great parts about this platform, other than the regional group meetings, are these. We have lunch and learns. We have them every single month. They are hosted by experts. We actually are booked out through the fall, so we're really excited to be hosting now, I think, our 7th or 8th lunch and learn of the year with our friends at Vote Run Lead. So again, you get a ton of access to these incredible resources, and we would love to have all of you. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The way that this is going to work is it is now 12 p.m., 12:03 p.m. Central Eastern Time. I'm on Eastern Time. And we're going to go until 1:00 p.m. Eastern Time. And so I'll pass it over to Erin, who will go through the presentation. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll try to get to those at the end, but we'll also have some time for Q&A as well for you to share questions at the end of the session. If you have to leave, or you want to rewatch this as many times as possible, we are also recording the session, so we will make sure that we share it out to all of you once the session is available. And I think I have shared everything. So Erin, I will pass it over to you for you to introduce yourself to the group, and we will get your slides ready to go.
Okay. Hi, Karen Mulhauser. How are you? Yay. It's so nice to see so many familiar names. I know a lot of you are off camera, but it is super nice to see your name nonetheless. And hello from New York. I'm Erin Vilardi. I'm the founder of Vote Run Lead and CEO of Vote Run Lead and Vote Run Lead Action, which is our C4. Today we are here in our C3 capacity to tell you more about VRLHQ. And I think the biggest thing I want you to know about VRLHQ is to take it. I want you to steal it. I want you to use it. We spent a lot of time building this resource. We are continually building this resource. It is for you, our peers in this space, to use as you see fit. And so you do not have to recreate the wheel. That is the big message of today, if there's no other message that you get out of this. So super excited to be here. Thank you to my friends at Represent Women. You all are doing amazing work in a conversation I think that isn't had enough about the systemic change that's needed and the role that gender and women and gender expansive people play in that conversation and that intersection. So thank you all for that, and say hello to Cynthia for me. who we are in constant contact. So yeah. All right, we're good. Go to the next slide. That's me. That's like a really badass photograph of me. I'm not sure that I should continue to use it because I feel like it's a little bit mean and I'm a little more friendly than that. But for those of you who don't know me, this is my life's work to advance women's political representation. I've been doing it since an internship at something called the White House Project in 2003, and got to kick off Vote Run Lead as a nonpartisan national field organization, led that for about 10 years at the White House Project, and then brought Vote Run Lead out as a standalone C3 organization in 2014. And we have an amazing network of women across the country, including 6 women in Congress, 5 of whom are women of color, 100+ women in state legislatures across the country. And we are really proud of and tired of putting a lot of firsts in public office. So I think that's, when I started looking for internships in the early 2000s, it was like you could work at COP, you could work at the, like 1 or 2 colleges had women's leadership centers, maybe 3 or 4 across the country. And then there was this thing called the White House Project, which just happened to be in New York City and be ultimately where I ended up and have continued to grow. And I think it's just a testament to the strength, the quiet strength that the women's political and civic communities have had in continuing to build from a small group of resources, right? Continuing to lean on one another's talents, continuing to push the sector forward to be what is a really robust sector, and ultimately recognized as a cohort in the last few years by, you know, one of the world's smartest and richest women who's decided to invest in many of us. And it really is our time. And it is really our time, not just because of the talents in this organization and in these organizations, but because there is truly a rise of authoritarianism around the globe, not just here in the United States, but in elections all across the world. And advancing women, advancing gender expansive people into leadership is exactly the antidote to their worldview, right? The answer to a strong man is smart women and our allies. And it is, you know, sometimes I think we can get down into the tactical stuff, but do know that we are really a part of a global community of women and gender expansive people around the world who are fighting for our very rightful and necessary place in leading the world into something that we haven't yet seen. So that's enough of me. Next slide, thanks. A couple of years ago, we made a very strategic shift at Vote Run Lead from being a training organization primarily to having ultimately 2 purposes. And the VRLHQ really serves this continued purpose of making sure that every person everywhere that wants these political resources can have them and for free. But our majority purpose is to move the state legislatures to be 51% women and inclusive of gender expansive folks. And that is what you see here in our theory of change, that these majorities, the rightful population majorities of representation, would actually create a set of policies and help to normalize our leadership. And that is a positive cycle. And that's how we move forward and then continuing to make that happen. Right now, many of us know there's only 1 state in the country, Nevada, that has a majority of women. We are keeping our fingers crossed and our, you know, CNN projecting that New Mexico will likely be over 51%. We have a couple of states like Colorado and others that are close. And we've noticed a trend that it's really mostly happening at the state representative level in the lower house. And so really thinking about how we focus on the state senates, on rural seats, where we know that we have yet to see often women run for, let alone serve in those seats, and that there's some real opportunities for us as we think about the changing role of the presidency and presidential elections and the important power center that our state legislatures are for this work and essentially the laboratories of democracy that so much of the system change could potentially happen at the state level. So that is our theory of change at VRL. Next slide. And why, as a part of this conversation, is it so critical? Is because, and I don't have to tell you all this, you guys know this, you live this, you breathe this. 34 of the state legislatures control their own lines, 39 control congressional lines. So if we really want to have non-minority rule, where you know, we have to be looking at who controls the congressional lines, who controls the independent redistricting groups in some of these other 11 states, because it is hypercritical that we count correctly about who are American citizens and who needs to be counted in the census, and that we then draw respective lines so that we and the folks often who look like us don't get boxed into districts that look like salamanders. So all that good work you all know, and we are working on together. Next slide. I'm gonna close this door. And it's gonna work. It is going to work. And I think we have to be ready for what that means, because it will be, it'll be, I think, an opportunity for hope over the next couple of weeks as we think about this election, 2026, 2028, to see more women-led majorities, more majorities inclusive of gender expansive people, more majorities that look like the racial demographics of the states that we live in, more firsts and barrier breakers. It is going to happen, and we need to be prepared for our own ascension. So hopefully that's a little good news in what has been a completely psychotic summer of elections and politics. All right, so let's dig into VRLHQ, and for that Represent Women team, I'm gonna need to share my screen because I'm gonna be sort of live demoing the site. So the first thing I want everybody to do is to actually go over to vrlhq.org, and I'll give you a minute to do that. vrlhq.org. And I'm going to ask that you create a login. Yep, thank you so much. This is free. The login is free, so I'm going to take a minute to do that. There's not a login so we can track you. There's no two-step authorization. I'm not looking for your cell phone number, but we have to be able to tell, as many of you know who work in, nonprofit community, have to be able to tell our supporters and donors what are the pages that are getting the most used, what are the resources that are getting the most downloads. So it's important for us to track this work. So take a minute and do that, and then I'm gonna share my screen and make sure that that is all set. Okay. I'm showing you something else right now. Okay. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen with the VRLHQ? Great. Awesome, thank you. Okay. Here we are. So a little fun fact, women of color developers, women of color designers helped lead this project. We hired this artist to make these beautiful, I don't know what you call these, they're not animations, they're sort of images. And I'm just really proud of the team that put this together. VRLHQ has been a real labor of love. We spent multiple months working with a group called RippleWorks. You should all check them out. They're doing some fascinating work, and they do help nonprofits with like a big challenge. RippleWorks helped us think through, like, there truly isn't a singular funnel. I think so many donors and philanthropy has been asking us, like, as a women's political leadership community, to sort of figure out the funnel or singular life cycle of a woman and like what she needs from the idea of thinking to run for office to actually running. And that it truly is multiple entry points. And so we didn't build VRLHQ as a funnel. We built it for multiple entry points, because often women come to running for office and let's say they are good fundraisers, right? They're not going to need the whole fundraising team plan, right? They're going to need something else. They're going to have different set of priorities. They're going to need to figure out more about how to tell their story and talk to voters than necessarily building a campaign team, or that the way they have entry points into this is at various degrees. And so this is not built in a funnel way. This is built in a way that feels like you can do and take and use what is most needed for you. Though when you do look across the top bar, it is mirroring a life cycle for many of my campaigners, where you could also follow this in a way that feels very linear, right? Plan the strategy, build the team, fund the plan, tell your story, talk to voters. I'll sample through just some of those, but where I want to actually start is on something that I stole from the Aspen Institute called collections, and I'm crediting them here. So we also want you to steal this. So intellectual, with honesty, taking good ideas from others. And the collections piece, which is really critical, is looking at things that don't necessarily fit that more linear 5 topics when we think about traditional, what it means to run a campaign. And these are things like, how do you actually think about running for office? What does it mean to have that conversation with your peers, your family, et cetera? And so a lot of you are doing that level of work where you're just having those conversations with different folks. And I really want you to take a look at these resources that allow you to say, you know, a tip sheet for a young woman thinking about running, an ability to like actually run as you are, to understand what it means to like work and research within your own district. Like when somebody says to you, what's your win number if you're thinking about running? It's like, what? I don't even know what the top priorities are of the folks in my community. A step-by-step guide for the State House, how you tell your story, what office should I run for, right? Also, these are all real office holders from real trainings. We do not use stock images. These are real women from across the country that have done it. And so I'm going to show you this resource. What office should I run for? I think is such a critical question, right? And so it asks you like, what office suits me? What's the best thing for me? Where do I align with the issues? What are the things that are the problems like constituents face? What office can actually solve those problems? So this is for you to steal, print out, go through, right? Of course, we ask that you give us credit and all those good things, but this is exactly the kind of resource for folks who are really at that like precipice of, hey, I think I want to do this. I'm not sure where I want to start. Also in the collections are things where you are going to find, and this is, I'm just so proud of the team managing the campaign. Vote, Run, Lead is primarily over the years, and many of you know us as training women to run for office and win. The campaign manager resources was really critical for a lot of reasons. One, there weren't enough women and gender expansive folks behind the scene being campaign managers. Women of color particularly were asking us for women who looked like them, who had their same lived experience, so they didn't have to extend the additional brain power to sort of explain why, you know, a lot of things, you know, like maybe if you're a churchgoer, why Sunday morning truly was off the table for your campaign manager, why picking up your kids at this particular time or going to these meetings and communities that you were a part of was top priority, right? And the campaign manager curriculum, the team really looked at it through an equity lens. Like that there's no way, I mean, my theory is like the reason we don't have a ton of women-led or folks and firms on K Street is because it's not sustainable for women to be on a campaign manager call with the party at 10:30 at night and then get up the next morning and like make breakfast for their kids. Like that shit is just burning us out, right? And so you end up with these women, these young women who've cut their teeth on campaigns, but cannot figure out how to both from a financial perspective and from a responsibilities perspective, make this a career where they're, you know, becoming the next political operatives of the next generation. So the campaign manager school is built in a really equitable way. And what's nice about this is these are online resources that will match up with a lot of the in-person trainings you'll see from Vote, Run, Lead. And some of my favorite ones, let me see, there's one here that I really like. And it's like, yes, so, okay, so you're seeing all these tools, leveraging how to be the best kind of campaign manager you can be, relational organizing, a robust volunteer program. The skills assessments for candidates and staff, I really love these. I love the empowerment that they give the campaign managers. There it is. A guide to finding the right candidate and getting hired, right? Like to work for the person that you actually want to work for. So again, this is one of those like putting the campaign manager woman at the center and saying like, hey, I actually like don't just want to be cutting my political teeth to get this on my resume. I really want to work for someone who I care deeply about. What are my deal breakers? What are my boundaries? I don't know of another like resource for campaign managers that's like really just sort of making sure you like ask these questions, think about pay, think about benefits, right? And just having that space and time as a guide for you as a potential campaign manager to say, like, who do I really want to work for? So that is, I mean, there's so many. This is so good. Rebecca is awesome. This is such a good building a data-driven campaign with Rebecca Tahaj Harvey. So good. Amazing videos, all real women, adorable icons. All right. I think one of the other things there are 2 other sections I want to bring your attention to, and then I want to take some questions and I don't think we need the whole hour, right? One is many of you heard us talk about Run As You Are as a sort of both a message and methodology for Vote Run Lead. One of those is here in fundraising, which is like exploring our relationship with money, right? This is a really critical conversation that many of us need to have. I have this conversation both with my husband, who grew up as a different class than I did, with my peer group, right? And it's really important that we think about this like within our jobs and of course within campaigning. Yes, we know all the research about women in fundraising that, we tend to have smaller and closed networks, men tend to have open networks. And so when we ask our friends and family for money, it ends up being like a smaller group of folks versus when our male counterparts ask their friends and family for money, it has like an actual networked out effect, right? We also know all the research that says like women of color and wealth, that we have different access to lower amounts of money. If you come from a low income community, friends and family isn't necessarily the first circle on your bullseye. Like the bullseye is dead. Our relationship to money, really having that kind of heart-to-heart conversation with yourself, to be able to go out and ask for money in a way that says like, I am valuable and I am worthy of receiving the money that you are going to give me to do the ideas that I am bringing to you. That is transformative when we do it in person. I imagine it has to have some of the similar effect on video, right? Like of course, it's always better to do in a group of people, but this video is one of those ones where you should feel the kind of like, goosebumps, because you should really, you should leave there really understanding what are some of your own BS about money, right? And what are some of the ways of which you are really, really worth it, really worth it. That pairs, with all sorts of then very practical tip sheets, right? All this goes with that video of exploring our relationship with money, a voter direct ad script, what are the fundraising tools that are out there right now? Lord help me that we ever need fundraising during the pandemic again. But of course, if there's anything where it requires social distancing, this was a really super helpful topic that said like, no, don't call up people that are, again, your friends and family who may be struggling. This is the time to call the folks in your network or your network of networks that are high net worth and say, I need you to double down, because no, I cannot ask my friends and family at this point. I cannot ask my neighbors. I cannot ask my peer group, right? And the ways that we had to sort of shift our mindset during the pandemic, it's still really valuable. The ROI on some of the fundraising tactics, right? We're not going to have a small dollar donor campaign online if we are running a city council race, right? That has a budget of $50,000. So it really is sitting there and doing that call time. And then the other one that is my fave, and I will after my fave, where is it? Tell your story. This is the bread and butter of Vote Run Lead. I think this is the work that for VRL has really allowed us to create a different conversation about women and gender expansive people, and that the value of their lived experience in our political discourse, and the experiences and the challenges that we often overlook as leadership qualities. The times in our life where we have tackled a challenge and then don't actually consider that a leadership skill or sort of flexing a leadership muscle. And so that is this, the importance of storytelling in your campaign timeline. And the storytelling trainings, there are multiple videos. This is one of our most video heavy sections. There are multiple videos that are going to walk you through the exercise of finding that time in your life when you exhibited that leadership quality, right? Thinking of other people in your orbit who have been able to, what are the leadership qualities that you admire in them? And then actually naming times in your life when you have exhibited those leadership qualities, then translating those stories into stories for the campaign trail. It is a really powerful exercise. I wash my hands of all other communication storytelling from all other groups. I think after 20 years of doing this work, I get the right to sort of have one area that I can say like loud and proud. This VRL storytelling workshop is the best workshop on storytelling for the campaign trail that is out there hands down. So please use it, steal it. And the nice part of this is that Many of these women that have created this curriculum are part of a coaching program for Vote Run Lead. So if you do have candidates, I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but if you do have candidates that you are sharing these resources with, and they are running in the current cycle, they are eligible to get some campaign coaching on the C4 side of our work. So I'm gonna stop there and see if there's any questions on VRLHQ, questions about how to use it, when to use it. Again, I want you to share this far and wide, and then there are two more things I just want to show you, but that are not as critical. All right, Victoria, I see your hand up, but
Yeah. Thank you, Erin, so much. I just had I love this, first of all. I think this is an incredible resource. And I was kind of following along when you were going through all of the, all of the things that it offers, that this platform or this resource offers. And I saw one on campaign safety, and I was curious if you could talk about that, because I'm currently in office, and city council, campaign safety, being a woman of color, it's just such a real issue for us. And I think we're seeing it grow. And so I would love to see more on that and hear your take on the campaign safety piece, because I think we're just now starting to crack the surface on how being in office as a woman and a woman of color can be very unsafe at times. So I would love to talk more about that.
Absolutely, that's a wonderful question. This is, in fact, our newest collection, and I will say it's imperfect. I think we are, unfortunately, the rapid click and the rise of political violence. Like I don't know that any of us can really as quickly sort of turn around really powerful resources, but we are doing our best, and I want folks here to know who may not be a part of some of these conversations that are happening. Everybody is talking about it. So I'm going to go through these resources, but first there's a group, the Pipeline Initiative is working with their state partners in about 13 states to be putting on anti-political violence, anti-harassment trainings for candidates and campaigns over the next, I would say, I think that they start in a couple of weeks and they're going to go through to the election. Pipeline Initiative is, through that network, is also creating a set of kind of rooms. I'm not going to call them war rooms, but I can't think of a better word right now, like hubs, if you will, resource hubs for candidates who are running and who are experiencing harassment and violence to actually be able to sort of call in and get different amounts of advice, whether that's like legal advice. I'm not sure exactly what the offerings will be, but I do want to share that with all of you because I just found that out last week, and I think it's really an important. I want to help spread the word when that gets officially up and running. So that is Pipeline Initiative through their. I'm gonna totally blank on the name. I want to say it's like Defensive Democracy for America, but that's not right. But I will ask the folks there to make sure, Victoria, that you get that and we get that information out to everybody in the WPC network. I think this is the best. This really feels like the strongest piece of curriculum on the VRLHQ side is creating a campaign safety plan for your team. And this resource is pretty detailed, right? It's your personal safety, it's your candidate, how we keep the candidate safe, your office safety, the events that you're working on, social media and online safety, and then it sort of links to some of the other ones, including some resources that we'll have here, which is like, this also we know affects our mental health. These are a set of questions that you should go through, and here's like the guide to how to use it, that you should be going through with your campaign manager, or the campaign manager should be bringing that to their candidate. So the safety plan is a set of questions that essentially should serve as a guidepost for you and your campaign to be a level of preparedness. The other one that I think is strong is, of course, know your rights in police interactions. This link is broken. Online harassment field manual is very good. And then here it is, the door knocking. I think this is also a really critical one to think about for campaigns to be actively talking about this. Same sort of format where you see you sort of, right, like using your judgment, making sure your team knows that they don't feel good about going to a door. They don't have to go to that door, right? Something like as simple as that. What are some signs that like are actual signs that tell you things that you may be able to know? Know your legal rights as a part of this, right? Use de-escalation tactics, going in pairs, things that feel very tactical right now. Those are, I think, two of the best resources here as we think about campaign safety. But this whole collection is one of those ones that you should be, actively talking about this with your candidates, figuring out what the personal mental health components of this are, figuring out what the plan is going to be on your campaign team. Particularly online too, thinking about like what some of your reactions are going to be, how you're going to manage some vitriol when it comes in, who is going to manage that, right? You do not want to be putting your like 19-year-old volunteer to be getting some incoming messages. Like you want to be really thoughtful about who is the right person, what is the preparedness for that. So it's ugly. I don't want to say it's not ugly, but also recognize that so many of us are working on this in real time, trying to figure out how we can make it better. The other thing too to think about is like, what is your relationship with the local police? And that is really tricky. There's a lot of folks working on that right now because not all communities can, show up at the police station in the same way and get the same respect as, your sort of upper class white woman with pearls telling the chief of police that she's been harassed versus, I don't know, a queer young woman of color and they dismiss her and whatever it is that she's bringing to them. There's a lot of stuff there. So, but we do need to build those relationships, and figuring out how to do that is really, really tricky. But it is something that we should be talking about. Thanks for that really important question, Victoria. It's so critical. All right, I see a hand up, Jamie.
Hey there, sorry I'm off camera. Jamie with Emerge. I was wondering, hello, thank you for all these resources. How can candidates access the C4 coaching that you mentioned?
Absolutely. Stephanie or C or anyone on my team want to just drop some of those links?
I'll drop it in.
Awesome. Yeah.
And these are this is only for candidates that identify as she, her, correct? Women candidates or all candidates?
And gender expansive folks.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And then since people were talking about campaign safety, I dropped in the chat just a flag. Emerge America will be hosting a free virtual continuing education session, not just for our alums, but for everybody with
Awesome.
Democracy Security Project, Wednesday, July 31st at 8 p.m. If y'all want to come, just email me. It's in the chat.
That's it. I think Pipeline has funded Democracy Security Project.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So
Yes,
that's the work. Democracy Security Project is the resource. Thank you so much, Jamie. So take those trainings. And the other thing about taking those trainings is give the feedback, because Pipeline is really committed to making sure that if it didn't work, didn't land, wasn't a scenario for you, that we're sort of rebuilding these tools in real time. Great. Awesome. All right. Any other questions on VRLHQ? Our biggest thing, I think, is I would love to tell us. Stephanie Demmons is on. She's our partnerships director. Just tell us that you're using them. Like, I know it's hard, like you don't need to slap a logo on it. Like, we don't need to go nuts on that stuff. Like, just tell us that you're using them so we can bring those stories to funders and say, these are the groups that are using them. This is what's happening. It's getting out there. So right now, Delta 4 Women in Action, which is the C4 of one of the country's largest Black sororities, is running a C4 program for Black women running for the state and House at the state level, at the legislative level. And they, as part of their program, are using VRLHQ. Yes, she's also a co-founder of Friendly, but I'm giving you that example as like, she didn't even tell me. She's like, oh, I forgot to tell you. I'm using all the stuff on VRLHQ. I'm printing it all out. Great. Like, that's all you have to tell us. So just shoot Stephanie an email. If you want to put your email in the chat, Stephanie. And if you have any questions about partnering up, using the resources, any of that, if you have ideas, if you yourself have stuff that you all have created that you would like to see on the VRLHQ, we can get that in front of our curriculum team and they can sort of determine if it goes into the next batch. Do we do a collection? They work on this in sort of a semi-annual basis. It takes a lot of work, of course, to put up a collection or a whole section, but this should really be something that is reflective of the community. And of course, we will credit you in all the appropriate ways. Use it in your classrooms. And please, I think our big ask for all of you is to spread the word about this. Like, girl, don't build another one. It's too expensive, takes too long. It like costs too much money, too many woman hours to put this together. So, you know, let's figure, and there are a couple of these, right? Like Arena has a good one. You know, just take the best from what's already out there.
Erin, it looks
All
like
right.
there's one more question that came in specific to
Sure.
resources on getting to know your constituents or community better, if any come to mind for you.
I think I would go to the collection of, I would say talking to voters is where you're gonna find a bulk of that, right? Because you can use the field organizing basics. Hold on, let me share screen. I'm not doing that. Okay. You can see that, right? Yep. So, I would like the field organizing basics is going to have stuff. You may not be using it in the exact way that it's laid out in the sense of, you know, you're right within the campaign, but that it's going to be that kind of, it's going to be the same kind of tactics, right? Whether you're exploring or not. I would say the same thing for intro to field targeting, probably guide to canvassing. Oh, this is interesting. Building relationships with rural communities and gatekeepers. That's absolutely one for you to use for that. And then the other collection that I would look at here is the getting ready to run. That's going to have a lot of those like exploratory, who's in my community, putting together your kitchen cabinet, right? Folks who maybe ambassadors or sort of leaders within informal and formal community networks in your district. So I take a look at those. Yeah, researching your district. Thanks, Stephanie.
Erin, this is going to be really helpful for this group as well, for the Women's Power Collaborative, because we have a group that is, if they are candidates or elected officials. And so we are now starting to really engage with this group and make sure that we are trying to at least have semi-regular meetings with them. We know their schedules are so busy, but resources like really helpful to be able to share with that group. And also just thinking about here in Portland, and City Hall here, when you decide that you're going to run for office, you get a binder that's like, here's like, so you want to run for office, here's what to expect, but it's all like really technical stuff that is very, very challenging to read, challenging to understand, especially if you're a first-time candidate. So I'm thinking like, how do I get this in that packet? Because these are the things,
Yes,
especially for myself as a first-time candidate, I really needed to know, even like, you know, how to do door canvassing, which I had no idea, like de-escalation tactics. I was doing a bunch of things like not incorrectly, but it could have been a lot easier for me if I had a little guide. So I'm thinking about how like this type of resource could be part of that packet that I think cities and jurisdictions give out when people are actually deciding that they're going to run for office. So I think it would be super
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
And you know, that could be something as simple as a tag, you know, I mean, I say that, but I'm not a developer, but like, that could be something as simple as a tag, like, and thinking about just the way that we've organized these is like, oh, a little, pull it together as a tag in the back end and then create like, hey, for elections or once you're elected, good transition materials to review. Yeah. And I think just like one of the big things is just sort of keeping yourself whole, right? It's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm city council member elect, like, who am I? Am I supposed to dress this way? You know, there's so many of those questions. This video, Representative Gonzalez, I think is the first, she was like one of the youngest people ever elected to the Texas state legislature, one of the first members of the LGBTQIA community to be elected to the Texas legislature. She is so grounded and so wonderful. And this video of what it means to run as you are, like, gets me every time. And I've seen it 1,000 times. And it is that kind of just continual message to just be in your own power, to continue to be yourself. Like, yes, you can modify, learn, grow, but there are some foundational things about who we are and not to let those go as you transition from candidate to elected official. Two other quick things I just want to essentially share with you. One, many of you have seen this. This is the state of my democracy. On the legislative level, we have mapped every state across the country when it comes to the state senates, as well as the lower house of where you should be in proportion to the number of women who are in the legislature. And we have done the deep dive of, let's take Latinas, where Latinas should be in proportion to the census data representative of in the House and in the Senate. So in a state like Kansas, where Latina population makes about 6%, there are no women in the state Senate, and we're only halfway there and thinking about the House. So lots of good information, talks about the low number of the pay you can get here, talks about where we are in some of our key issues, some of the alumni that have been through. Stephanie Clayton is cool. Where Kansas ranks on some of the top issues that women care about, voter ID. So please use this for your state. The report card is both national, and then here's where you can find all 50 states. And then the last thing I want to show you is also state-based. The fastest way we get to women's majorities is by making sure that women are in all open seats. We know this. This is decades-long strategic research that we've known. Here is state by state how that needs to happen. So this is some of the stuff about open seats, incumbent advantage. 27 incumbents, of course, ran completely unopposed. We know that. But when it comes to the good news, open seats are the strategy. And there are over that last cycle, I think there was 1,100 open seats. And men ran for 93% of those open seats. Now, some of this is party stuff, right? Talking to the caucuses, but women only ran for 69% of the open seats. So just that gender gap is one of the things that really feels like is an opportunity for rapid representational growth. We win in equal numbers. That's different for state by state, sure. Oh, there's Mary again. But we can actually go state by state. These are some of our strategies. I'm not going to go through that with you. You can dig in, especially for my more data nerds. Let's take good old North Carolina. How long will it actually take us to get there? If you end up having women, who run at the best average, the national average, that increase, do you see that change? It went up to 36% in 10 years, right? Or if we have women running for open seats, how that actually changes and accelerates the timeline. If incumbents retain, how does that actually change the percentage of women? So it helps at a state-by-state strategy to have an understanding of, do we need more women running for these open seats? Do we need the conditions to allow women to win these open seats? Do we need to be thinking strategically about retirements, right? And lowering incumbency power in these states. So that's just something I want to draw your attention to as community members, and let you know that is a resource that's been built for all of us. And Rachel Jack, please ask your question. Hi.
Thanks so much. Sorry, I'm off screen. My question is, and I come at this from I'm wearing two different hats. One, I'm a board member of Fund Her, which is a PAC that's dedicated to electing progressive women to state offices to hit gender parity. So very mission aligned. But I'm also the executive director of Register Her, which focuses strictly on activating and registering women to vote. And so that's the piece. I mean, I know you can't be all things to all people, of course, right? But there's a lot of data actually that shows that just more women incrementally need to to vote to help elect these women who are running for office. And so I'm just wondering if anywhere in your offerings, if there is kind of a voter registration activation piece that's not so much from the candidate, but from a 501c3, perspective, because that's really what led to us founding Register Her, was wanting to get more women into office. And we did a bunch of research and found so many elections that were won or lost by less than 5% margin of victory. And then women candidates who were losing those races. And when we debriefed with them and asked them what they needed, a lot of them didn't say training or money. They said they felt they had that support. They just needed to somehow get they were just so close, And so I'm just curious what either resources you have, or whether or not there is any part of what you all are doing to get more women to participate so that we can help elect more women?
That is not our wheelhouse, and I'm fascinated by that data and not surprised. And I think that the idea of like women's voter registration sort of almost exclusively often like running through a party, you know, or running
Yes.
like
Yeah.
partisan meetings is a missing component of this sort of pipeline of how we get women and more gender expansive people to win and over the finish line. I would also agree with that assessment. We are doing a good job of as a training community of providing training and resources, and candidates say that sort of it matches up. This research is also from Pipeline. They do their like every 2 years. Pipeline Initiative puts out research with, I think it's HART, H-A-R-T, where you can go and you can see that they do feel like they're getting good value out of the training, especially women, especially younger women. And that like we have to keep up that infrastructure. There, of course, is always the money gap. Like they do want more access to money, but it often ends up where the need is the volunteers and volunteer coordination to get out voters. So that, Rachel, that feels very directly connected to what you're saying, is that like, did we turn out enough voters? Did we have enough women registered in these districts? And that's, there's this gap. They use a bar chart where it says, did they get like volunteer coordinators, access to volunteers, sort of networks of people to actually do GOTV, and versus what they saw it as a value. And that's the largest gap for the women candidates.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of flag that for you and for people who are on the
wish.
call,
I mean,
because I
you
think they
know,
have to go hand in hand
Yep.
to really get
You're
to the
totally
vision
right.
that you know, that we're aspiring to.
Yes. It's great to meet you, Rachel. Please reach out to Stephanie and our team and let's talk.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And also doesn't have to be questions, statements, disagreements, ideas. Or also we can have 12 minutes back and go to the bathroom and other things between our back-to-back schedules.
Also, Erin, someone put in the chat too, is there an analysis? I think it was maybe the data dashboard. Is there an analysis of full-time state legislatures based part-time and pay differentials?
I think there is, I don't know if it's really accessible in the way that we only have it state by state there, like we don't have it in another chart, but there is a big push. And our New Mexico state director is also a state representative. Her name is Angelica Rubio. I don't know if Angelica's on. But she's been one of the folks. New Mexico pays nothing. They have a per diem. I think New Hampshire gives you $100. And some of the state stuff is very low pay. So what's being called, I would say, legislative modernization is the way that like everyone seems to be talking about it, philanthropy activists. One of the biggest things that we're proposing is that this sort of push in legislative pay. So there is, and I wonder, like, I'm wondering out loud to you all, I know this is like a public meeting, but also like you're all family because we're all trying to do the same thing. I wonder if legislative pay will also like have positive effects on seeing, of course, more working class people, more men of color run for office. So I think it's one of those things where things that are good for women, like to have higher pay for these jobs in the legislature, will end up ultimately having an effect on creating a broader set of greater diversity, like kind of like ranked choice voting, you know, like Represent Women was all in on ranked choice voting because we saw that more women ended up in these city council seats and becoming mayors, but ultimately we've also seen that it changes the racial makeup of these bodies. So like New York City Council is now majority women of color. So I think those are just, increasing legislative pay is going to have one of those positive effects in the broader diversification of our leaders than just advancing women. And it's floating around the internet somewhere, yeah. But it's not clean. It's like an academic paper right now, and somebody needs to make it pretty. I think the login, Andrea, if I'm saying that correctly, is the same. I mean, all these resources, while we do have a state legislative event to a lot of the resources on the VRLHQ, for sure, can be translated to running for a school board seat or for like a board of regents for higher ed. I don't know that you'd use the same sort of fundraising components, right? Even for an appointment, but a lot of the political tactics are very much going to be useful in thinking about, you know, how you garner the support in order to get you over the finish line. I think we have a closing slide. If we can put it up, great. If not, that's okay too. But the number one thing on that closing slide is for sure, please spread the word, use the stuff, take it, steal it. Like, it's ours, you know, it's not Vote Run Leads, it's really ours. It's the communities. I share this with folks globally. Copy it, steal it, all those good things. And if you do remember, tell Stephanie that you are using it. And take a picture. That'd be adorable too. We'll put that on social media. But of course, let us know so that we can, I can stop sharing. Sorry, I didn't realize I still was. Great. And then also in the chat, Stephanie has put on the Vote Run Lead action side, taking one hat off, putting the other. There's a series of webinars that are happening. Of course, we would love you all to attend some of relational organizing, lots of good stuff. And all of us are, you know, continuing to put really good work forward. And I'm really appreciative of this growing community, especially at a time where I think many other folks would have thought there would be shrinking. There has been nothing but growth. So email Stephanie, uplift VRLHQ, take the coaching program, send it out to your networks, join the webinar series, and thank you for being a part of this. It's going to happen.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. Stephanie, do you have any additional remarks that you want to add before I do my closing?
No, I think Erin covered it. I dropped all of the links for for our programs and the upcoming events that are happening. So check those out. And please, I would love to talk to people. So if we haven't met yet, I will follow up and I'll put my email one more time in the chat so folks have it. Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you so much. Huge thank you to Erin. Thank you so much for this incredible presentation of VRLHQ. I know it was super valuable just judging from the chat and how many people registered. And a great big thank you to the whole Vote Run Lead staff. I know there were some members in the audience. I know Stephanie's here, obviously, Amy, C. Thank you so much. The Represent Women team really appreciates your partnership and all of the important work that you do. So thanks again for joining us and putting on an incredible Lunch and Learn. And a huge thank you to all of you who joined. Like I mentioned, we had a ton of people register, even if they couldn't make it, which really speaks to the importance of this resource. So we're really excited for all of you to get plugged in, to get connected with Erin and Stephanie and the rest of the team. And also this session was recorded. So as soon as it's ready, we'll be sure to share it out along with some additional resources. And if that was your first Lunch and Learn, first of all, thanks for joining. And second of all, if you were like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun, I want to go to another one, you are in luck because we have another one on the calendar happening on Tuesday, August 6th, hosted by our friends at Emerge. I know Jamie was here, and so we'll have hopefully Jamie and a few other Emerge staff members that will be joining us again. That's Tuesday, August 6th. So be sure to register for the Women's Power Collaborative so you don't miss out on that. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'm happy to get them answered for you. But thanks for spending your lunch or your breakfast with us. We really appreciate it. Again, Erin and the Vote Run Lead staff, thank you so much for all of your time and the important work that you do. And we will all see each other soon. So take care. Thank you.